Monk of Ifrit. In the year of our Lord, 475, beneath a sky bruised with the amber of a dying sun, there came to the city of Ifrit a youth of peculiar lineage, Dueart, called Edward by those who knew him ere his wings unfurled. An avian monk he was, his feathers a muted grey, his eyes sharp as the falcons that wheeled above the basalt spires of that ancient settlement. Ifrit, a city hewn from the volcanic plains, stood as a beacon of trade and tumult, its walls rising like the ribs of some great beast long slain. Into this cauldron of humanity Dueart descended, his heart aflutter with the dreams of an adventurer newly born. The gates of Ifrit yawned wide, and the bustle of the marketplace assaulted his senses. His sight drank in the sprawl of stalls, wooden frames groaning under the weight of fresh loaves, crimson apples, and bolts of dried cloth. The guild hall loomed ahead, a squat edifice of stone adorned with banners that snapped in the dry wind. Guards in leather cuirasses stood sentinel, their spears glinting like the fangs of a predator. Crowds pressed about him, the tide of flesh and fabric, their voices a cacophony of barter and jest. The air sang with the clutter of coins, the cries of hawkers, and the distant clang of a blacksmith's hammer. Scents wafted thick, spices sharp as a blade's edge, the musk of unwashed bodies, the sweet rot of overripe fruit. His feathers brushed against strangers, the touch of the throng, a consistent pressure, a reminder of his smallness in this vast living organism of a city. Dueart, with his purse light but his spirit buoyant, sought the guild's favor. Within its shadowed halls, amid a scratch of quills and the murmur of scribes, he received his journeyman's title, a parchment stamped with the sigil of a phoenix, a promise of glory yet unearned. "Thou art adventurer now," spake the guildmaster, a grizzled man whose beard was thicket of silver. "Go forth, and let thy deeds sing louder than thy name." Dueart bowed, his wings rustling, and felt the weight of destiny settle upon him like a mantle. With his title secured, Dueart turned to the stalls to gather his meager supplies. A loaf of bread, hard as stone but fragrant with rosemary, found its way into his satchel. A waterskin, patched and smelled faintly of leather, joined it. A dagger, its blade dulled by time, was all his coin could muster, a pitiful thing, yet it gleamed with the promise of use. The Margot's din enveloped him, a symphony of light that drowned his doubt. He pressed through the crowd, his feathers catching on coarse tunics, his breath quick with anticipation. At the front gates a guard clad in iron regarded him with a squint. "Whither goest thou, fledgling?" the man rumbled, his voice a low growl beneath the clamor. "To the training fields," Dueart replied, his tone bold despite the tremor in his chest. "A mandragora stirs there, and I would test my mettle." The guard chuckled, a sound like gravel underfoot. "Mind thy wings, monk, those roots have a bite." Dueart nodded, undeterred, and swept beyond the gates, the city's noise fading into the whisper of wind across the ash-strewn plain. The outskirts of Ifrit stretched before him, a contained arena of earth and stone, its boundaries marked by low walls and the skeletons of felled trees. Here novices honed their craft, their shouts and the clash of steel and distant echo. Dueart's heart swelled with arrogance, a youth's folly that painted the world in hues of conquest. A mandragora, a plant beast of legend, its scream a harbinger of doom, would be his first foe. How grand a tale it would make, how swift his rise among the guild's ranks. It was not long ere he spied his quarry. Amid a patch of scorched earth where the soil cracked like the skin of some ancient leviathan, there stood the mandragora. A grotesque thing it was, its bulbous head a mockery of humanity, its roots writhing like serpents birthed from the abyss. Its eyes, small and black, glinted with the malice that pierced Dueart's bravado. Yet more than its form it bore a presence, a shadow cast not by light, but by memory. To Dueart it seemed the very guilt of his departure from home, the village he'd left behind, its hearths dimmed by his absence. Each tendril was a voice whispering, "Thou hast forsaken us." "Stand and face me, fiend!" Dueart cried, his voice a clarion in the stillness. He drew his dagger, its edge a feeble gleam, and charged, his wings beating to lend him speed. The mandragora stirred, its roots coiling and loosened a shriek, a sound that rent the air, a wail of abandonment that clawed at his soul. His ears rang, his vision blurred, and the world tilted as though the earth itself recoiled from the cry. He struck his blades, sinking into the creature's flesh, a pulpy mass that oozed a bitter sap. The mandragora thrashed, its roots lashing like whips. One caught his leg, a searing pain that dragged him to his knees. Another struck his chest, hurling him back, his breath stolen by the blow. The gilt beast loomed, its scream now a chorus of his mother's tears, his father's silence, the village elder's stern gazes. "Thou art weak," it seemed to hiss, a coward who fled. Dueart flailed, his dagger lost in the dirt, his wings beating feebly against the onslaught. Life as an adventurer, he learned in that dire moment, was no ballad of triumph, but a brutal dance with death. His arrogance shattered, replaced by the cold grip of fear. He was no match for this foe, this embodiment of his own remorse. The realization struck harder than the mandragora's roots. He was in peril, his life a thread frayed by his own hubris. With a cry, half prayer, half plea, he scrambled back, his hands clawing at the earth. The beast pursued, its tendrils snapping, its wail a relentless tide. "Help!" he shouted, his voice cracking, a fledgling's call to the winds. "Guards! Anyone!" His wings, battered and torn, lifted him just beyond a root's grasp. As he stumbled toward the gates, the mandragora's shrieks fading into a mocking echo. He ran, his breath a rigid sob, his body a tapestry of bruises and shame. The training field blurred past, its walls a cruel witness to his defeat. At last he glimpsed the guard, that same grizzled figure now sprinting toward him with spear in hand. "Fool of a monk!" the man bellowed, thrusting past Dueart to meet the mandragora. Steel met root, and the beast's cry turned to a gurgle as the guard's spear found its mark. The gilt thing withered, its form collapsing into the earth, a vanquished spectre of Dueart's past. Panting, Dueart sank to his knees, the guard's shadow falling over him. "Next time, bring more than a butter knife," the man grunted, turning back to his post. Dueart stared at the mandragora's remains, its sap pooling like tears unshed. He was alive, but the taste of victory was ashes in his mouth. Untasted, for his lips knew only the salt of sweat and fear. In the shadow of his near demise, Dueart sat upon the ashen ground, his wings folded about him like a shroud. The mandragora's death had not purged the guilt it embodied. It lingered, a quiet ache in his breast. He pondered his path, rethought the grand tapestry of adventure he'd woven in his mind. Was he to abandon this life, to slink back to the village with tail feathers drooping, or was there yet a spark within a will to rise stronger? The dilemma gnawed at him, a beast subtler than the mandragora. To cease adventuring was to admit defeat, to let guilt triumph, yet to press on as he was, unarmed, untrained, was to court death anew. At length a decision crystallized, born not of pride, but of resolve. He would get good, as the crude parlance of the guild might have it. Equipment must be forged, skills honed, his body tempered by practice, ere he faced another foe. The mandragora had been a mirror reflecting his weakness. He would shatter that image with preparation. Rising, Dueart cast a final glance at the training field, its silence now a balm. The city of Ifrit awaited, its gates a promise of renewal. He would return, not as a brash fledgling, but as a monk tempered by trial. The guilt of leaving home would not fade, but he would bear it, not as a foe, but as a spur to greatness.